Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to kind of shift gears a little bit and look at something a little different. We're still going to be doing like really in-depth explorations of source material and stuff like that. But today we're going to be talking about Elon Musk.
Okay.
But not like the typical Elon Musk stuff that you hear like in the news all the time. So
Yeah.
we're not going to be talking about Tesla or SpaceX or Twitter or Neuralink. Like all that is off the table for today.
All right.
Instead, we are going to be looking at the side of Elon Musk that doesn't get as much press. So we're going to be looking at stories of his generosity, his kindness, his philanthropy, and kind of the more human side of Elon Musk. And we are going to be basing this primarily on Walter Isaacson's new biography of Elon Musk.
Right.
But we will be bringing in some other sources as well to kind of round out the picture.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, we can't just rely on one source to get like a full picture of somebody like Elon Musk, especially somebody as complex as him.
Exactly. So let's jump right into it. Isaacson shares a story early on in the book about Musk on a flight, He's settled into his first-class seat. I mean, who wouldn't want to be there?
Right.
And he spots an elderly woman who is like visibly distressed about being separated from her child on this flight.
Okay.
And what's really striking is that Musk just gives up his seat for this woman.
He gave up his first-class seat?
Yes, first-class seat. Like no fuss, no drawing attention to himself. He just does it. It's a very simple act of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so unexpected.
Yeah. It's the Elon Musk that you read about in the headlines typically.
Right. So what do you make of that? Like, what's your take on that story?
Well, it's really interesting, right? Because like you said, that's not the Elon Musk that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
We're used to seeing the guy that's, kind of fighting with people on Twitter, making bold statements. And this is just a quiet moment of like genuine empathy. And it kind of suggests that there's more to him than meets the eye.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the mission of this whole deep dive is like to look beyond the headlines and see what else is there. And it makes you wonder, like, what drives that compassion? Where does that come from? And Isaacson hints that Musk's own childhood might hold some clues.
Oh, interesting.
He faced bullying, a strained relationship with his father. He talks about like a real sense of isolation growing up.
Right.
And I wonder if those early experiences kind of contributed to this, this sense of empathy that he seems to have for others.
Well, I mean, it's well known that our childhood experiences can have like a huge impact on who we become as adults.
Totally.
And it makes sense, right? If you've gone through difficult times yourself, you're more likely to be sensitive to the suffering of others.
Yes.
You can relate to it on a deeper level.
Totally.
So yeah, I think it's definitely possible that Musk's childhood played a role in shaping his empathy and his desire to kind of help others who are struggling.
Yeah. There's even a quote from Musk in the book where he says he doesn't want to inflict suffering on anyone. And it's almost like he's consciously trying to be different from the people who caused him pain.
Yeah, it's like he's breaking a cycle.
Yeah.
Right. He's seen how much suffering is out there, and he's trying to do something about it, not contribute to it.
Absolutely. And it's not just like small acts of kindness, like giving up his seat on a plane.
Right.
Isaacson also talks about Musk's larger philanthropic efforts. And he talks about Musk's response during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the world was in a total crisis mode.
Oh, yeah.
Hospitals were overwhelmed. There was like a global shortage of ventilators.
It was a scary time.
It was. And Musk donated over 1,200 ventilators to hospitals all over the world, potentially saving countless lives.
That's huge.
It is. There's even this story in the book about a hospital in Los Angeles that was on the verge of running out of ventilators. Like they were down to their last few. Oh. And suddenly this shipment of ventilators from Musk arrives. Like, can you imagine that wave of relief that those doctors and nurses must have felt?
I can't even imagine. It must have been like a miracle.
Totally. And it's important to remember that those ventilators weren't just numbers. Each one represents like a human life, a family that was spared from unimaginable grief,
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, but it's important to remember the human impact of these actions.
Absolutely.
Each one of those ventilators represents a story, a family, a life that was potentially saved.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a one-time thing either. Musk also helped produce a lot of personal protective equipment, PPE for frontline workers.
Right.
And this wasn't about publicity or anything like that. This was like a genuine desire to help, which again kind of makes you rethink that image of him as like this purely profit-driven CEO.
It does. It definitely complicates the narrative that we
Yeah,
often hear about him.
totally. So we've got ventilators, PPE, he's giving up his first-class seats, but there's more.
There's more.
Yeah, let's talk about the Flint water crisis.
Oh, right. That was awful.
Years of lead-contaminated water, right. A total public health disaster, especially for children.
Yeah.
And instead of making just like a broad donation, Musk took a very targeted approach.
Interesting.
He funded water filtration systems specifically in Flint schools.
So he was really focused on protecting the kids.
Yeah, the most vulnerable members of the community. And it's another example of Musk addressing a critical need in a very direct and practical way.
Yeah, he's not just throwing money at a problem. He's like, okay, what's the actual solution here?
Yeah.
Let's fix it.
Exactly. And then you have the Ukraine connection.
Oh, yeah,
After Russia invaded, communication was disrupted and reliable internet access became like super crucial.
there's a lifeline for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so Musk activated Starlink across Ukraine, providing this vital communication lifeline. Right. And he even sent like shipments of Starlink terminals over there.
Yeah, it was a bold move. And it was praised for its humanitarian impact, but it was also criticized by some for its potential military applications, right?
Yeah. I mean,
What's
well,
your take on that complexity?
it's a really tricky situation, right? Because on the one hand, Starlink undoubtedly helped a lot of civilians
Right.
stay connected.
Stay connected, access information.
Yeah, access vital information, keep in touch with their families.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, yeah, there's that potential for it to be used by the military,
Yeah.
which raises a whole host of ethical questions. It's one of those things where technology intersects with geopolitics in really complicated ways.
Totally, totally. But what really stuck with me was that Isaacson highlights the personal stories.
Right.
He talks about this nurse in Kiev named Oksana who was able to continue working thanks to Starlink.
Wow.
Like, just imagine that in the middle of a war zone.
This technology is allowing her to like continue her work, help people.
It's incredible. It really highlights the human impact of technology.
Yeah.
Like in a very real way.
It does. So we've seen like a lot of facets of Musk already, compassion in very like small personal moments,
Yeah.
large scale philanthropy, navigating the complexities of technology in a war zone.
Right.
And yet I still have this feeling like all of these actions are kind of at odds with the public image of him,
It's true. I mean, the Elon Musk that we see in the media
Mm-hmm.
is often portrayed as this kind of ruthless, kind of
Cutthroat.
cutthroat, businessman.
Right.
And these stories of generosity kind of clash with that image.
It's almost like we're seeing two different versions of Elon Musk.
It's like a paradox.
Right. And maybe that's the key takeaway here, that people aren't one-dimensional.
Exactly.
There's this complexity beneath the surface. And
I think that's true of everyone, right?
Okay.
We all have these different sides to us.
Eh.
It's just that with someone like Elon Musk, it's so much more amplified
Right.
because he's such a public figure.
Yes, totally.
Everything he does is scrutinized.
Yeah, but maybe in Musk's case, these acts of kindness are like, a way of balancing the scales, like a way of counteracting those more ruthless aspects of his ambition.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe it's just a genuine expression of empathy.
Right.
Like we were talking about earlier, maybe it stems from his own experiences with suffering. He's seen what it's like to be on the receiving end of cruelty.
Right.
So maybe he's just trying to make the world a little bit better,
It's probably a bit of both, right? Like, it doesn't have to be either.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's probably a combination of factors.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
When we're talking about people,
People are complicated.
yeah, we're all complicated. We all have our own motivations and our own stories.
Absolutely.
And it's important to try to understand those stories.
Yeah. So before we move on, I kind of want to ask you directly, like, as you've been delving into Isaacson's biography and considering all these quiet acts of kindness and generosity, what has stood out to you about Elon Musk? Like, what has surprised you the most?
Honestly, it's the consistency of his generosity.
Right.
It's not just like a one-off thing, Isaacson talks about how Musk has been doing this kind of stuff for decades,
Wow.
supporting a wide range of causes from like, STEM education to renewable energy research to fighting global poverty. It suggests that this isn't just some kind of PR stunt, you know? This is something that's deeply ingrained in who he is,
Yeah.
this desire to make a positive impact on the world.
It's a lot to think about, for sure.
It is.
And we've only just scratched the surface, right?
Yeah, we've just started to peel back the layers.
Exactly.
There's so much more to explore.
So you ready to keep digging?
Let's do it. Let's see what else we can uncover about the man behind the headlines.
All right, let's dive in.
Welcome back. You know, we were just talking about all those examples of generosity from Elon Musk,
Yeah, yeah.
and it really makes you think, right?
It does. Like, how do all these pieces fit together?
Exactly. Yeah.
We've talked about his childhood, his drive to alleviate suffering, his very strategic and targeted approach to philanthropy.
Right. Yeah.
But there's another piece of this puzzle that I find really fascinating, and
Right.
that's Musk's love for science fiction.
Oh, interesting.
He's a self-proclaimed sci-fi geek.
Mhm.
He's cited influences like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Yes.
the
Okay.
Foundation series. I mean, all these like really thought-provoking science
Yeah.
fiction works.
Mm.
And it makes you wonder, like, how much have those stories influenced his worldview?
Well, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, science fiction often grapples with these big questions, right? Like
Yeah.
the fate of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
the role of technology, the importance of ethics. Right?
Exactly.
And those are all themes that seem to resonate with Musk.
Totally, especially given his ambition to really push the boundaries of what's possible,
Yeah, I mean, he's not just trying to build electric cars or rockets.
Right.
He's trying to, fundamentally change the way we live
Yeah.
and the future of our species.
Exactly. Exactly. So do you think like reading all that science fiction could have actually influenced his desire to, make a positive impact on the world?
I think it's possible. Science fiction can be both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration.
Right.
It can show you the potential downsides of technology,
Hmm.
but it can also inspire you to use technology for good.
Yeah.
It can make you think about the long-term consequences of your actions
Hmm.
and the kind of future you want to create.
Yeah. And we know Musk has talked about his concern for the threat of artificial intelligence.
Right.
Maybe all those dystopian sci-fi stories he read kind of fueled that concern.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe that concern is part of what's driving him to try to steer AI in a more beneficial direction.
It's an interesting connection.
It is. It really makes you think about the power of stories.
Totally, totally. But we shouldn't get too carried away with speculation.
Right.
We should bring in some other sources here and see what else we can learn about Musk's motivations.
Yeah, let's expand our perspective a bit.
Okay, so I found this interview with one of Musk's former colleagues from PayPal.
Oh, interesting.
And he mentioned that even back then, like in the early 2000s, Musk was already focused on the bigger picture.
That's
Like he wasn't just interested in building a successful company.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to use technology to solve like global problems.
Yeah, so that drive to make a positive impact has been there from the beginning.
It seems like it, yeah. And this colleague also shared a story about how Musk would just like quietly fund research projects or charities that he believed in. Like there's this anecdote about him funding a research project on renewable energy. Yeah, and nobody even knew about it until years later.
Wow, so it's not about the recognition for him?
No, not at all. It's like this recurring theme, right?
Right, that quiet generosity.
Yeah.
Doing things without needing to broadcast it to the world.
Exactly.
That's pretty refreshing, actually.
It is. It's kind of a counterpoint to all the, attention-seeking behavior we see from a lot of other public figures.
For sure.
So I also found this article profiling a bunch of charities that Musk has supported over the years.
Okay.
And it's like a really diverse range of causes, STEM education programs, environmental conservation efforts,
Wow.
organizations combating global poverty.
So he's not just focused on one specific area.
No, it's very broad.
He's got a wide range of interests.
It really does seem like he's trying to make a difference on multiple fronts.
Yeah, it's like he sees these problems and he's like, okay, how can I help?
Exactly. And it goes beyond just financial contributions, too.
Oh, interesting.
Like, the article talks about how Musk will provide expertise, connect people, offer advice,
Okay.
open doors that might otherwise be closed for these organizations.
He's really using his influence and his network to make a difference.
Totally. He's like operating on multiple levels to try to
Yeah.
facilitate positive change.
That's impressive.
It is. It's pretty remarkable.
It is.
So putting it all together,
Yeah.
we've got the science fiction, the consistent support for all these different causes, the willingness to contribute far beyond just money.
Right.
It feels like we're starting to get a sense of what's driving these acts of kindness.
I think so. And it's important to remember, though,
Yeah.
that this doesn't erase any of the criticisms or controversies surrounding Musk.
No, absolutely not.
He's a complex figure. He's made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
He's faced accusations.
Right.
But by looking at these acts of generosity, we're adding another layer to our understanding of him.
Exactly. And that's kind of the point of this whole exercise, right?
Right. It's about acknowledging the full spectrum
Right.
of his character, not just focusing on the negative or the positive.
It's about seeing the whole picture,
Exactly.
the good and the bad, the ambition and the empathy.
Because that's what makes us human.
Right.
We're all a mix of different things.
Totally, totally. And it's interesting to think about how these acts of kindness, might influence how Musk is remembered in the future.
Yeah. I mean, right now,
Yeah.
he's such a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
People either love him or hate him.
It seems like it. Yeah.
But maybe as time goes on and we get some distance from all the current controversies,
Mm-hmm.
maybe these stories of generosity will start to shift the narrative a bit.
Yeah, maybe they'll help to kind of humanize him a little bit,
Yeah, exactly.
reveal a side of him that doesn't always get the spotlight.
That's a good point.
It makes me think about the power of even small acts of kindness.
Yeah.
I mean, Musk is known for these, grand visions, these ambitious projects.
Right.
But often it's the quieter moments, the smaller gestures of empathy and generosity that really stick with us.
They do.
They have this ripple effect,
Absolutely.
They touch lives in ways that we might not even fully comprehend.
I think that's true all of us, right?
Yeah.
The kindness we put out into the world, it has a way of coming back to us.
Totally, totally. So as we kind of wrap up this exploration of Elon Musk,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
What if, instead of just focusing on the big headline-grabbing achievements, we started paying more attention to the quiet acts of kindness that
Yeah.
happen all around us every day?
It's a good point. We often overlook those small moments of grace,
Totally.
but they're really what make life worth living.
Yeah, they're what connect us. They remind us of our shared humanity.
Exactly.
And that's a legacy worth striving for.
I agree.
Leaving the world a little kinder,
Mm.
a little brighter than we found it.
It's a beautiful thought.
Okay, so welcome back for the final part of our deep dive on this, less explored side of Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation for sure.
It has been. We've been talking about his motivations for these acts of generosity and kindness.
Right.
We've delved into his past, considered how science fiction might shape his worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So now I kind of want to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
How do these acts of kindness, these quieter moments, fit into the larger narrative of Musk's life and legacy? What do they tell us about how his character has evolved over time?
It's a really good question. And I think on the surface, these acts kind of seem at odds with the public image of him
Yeah.
as this bold, sometimes even brash innovator.
It's like we're trying to reconcile two very different versions of the same person.
Exactly.
The ambitious disruptor versus the compassionate philanthropist.
And maybe that tension is what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
It challenges our tendency to put people in boxes,
Right?
to label them as one thing or another.
To oversimplify.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe in Musk's case, these acts of kindness are a way of balancing the scales, a way of counteracting the more ruthless aspects of his ambition.
It's possible.
Or maybe it's a genuine expression of empathy,
Right.
a reflection of the lessons he's learned from his own experiences with suffering.
And it could be both, right?
It could be both.
It
Exactly.
doesn't have to be one or the other.
I think you're right. It's probably a combination of factors.
Yeah.
It's this a recognition that people are multifaceted.
Yeah.
We can be driven by ambition and fandy compassion at the same time.
Absolutely. We contain multitudes, as they say.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting to think about how these acts might influence how he's remembered down the line, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's such a polarizing figure right now.
Yeah.
People either love him or hate him.
It seems like it, yeah.
But maybe as time passes,
Mhm.
we get some distance from the current controversies.
Yeah.
Maybe these stories will help soften his image a little bit.
Maybe help humanize him.
Exactly.
Reveal a side that doesn't always get the attention.
I think that's a really important point.
It makes me think about the power of even small acts of kindness.
Mm,
Musk is known for these grand visions, these ambitious projects,
right.
but often it's the quieter moments, the smaller gestures of empathy and generosity that really resonate.
They do. They stick with you.
And they have this ripple effect, they touch lives in ways that we may never fully comprehend.
That's true.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I
Right.
want to leave our listeners with this. What if, instead of focusing solely on the grand achievements, the headline-grabbing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
we started paying more attention to those quiet acts of kindness that happen all around us?
It's a challenge.
Right. Those small moments of grace that we often overlook.
Yeah, those are the things that really make life beautiful.
They remind us of our shared humanity.
They do.
And ultimately, those acts of kindness, no matter how small they may seem, are
Hmm.
what connect us.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Yeah, and maybe that's a legacy worth striving for. Leaving the world a little kinder, a little brighter than we found it.
Absolutely.
All right, well, until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep your hearts and minds open to the unexpected wonders that surround you.
That's great advice.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.